This discussion this discussion is designed to do more than celebrate. It's meant to illuminate, challenge, and equip. As public conversations around the LGBTQ plus community grow louder and more divided, the need to lead with empathy, awareness, and purpose has never been greater. Today, we're joined by four incredible leaders who embody what it means to live, coach, and advocate with courage. From college athletics to grassroots organizing, from legal strategy to team culture, they are pushing for a future where all athletes are seen, supported, and safe. Let's take a moment to welcome each of them. First up, we have Kirk Walker. He's the Director of Administration for UCLA Softball and a seasoned leader in the college athletic space. With over 4 decades of coaching experience, including at Oregon State, Kirk made history in 2005 as the first publicly out Division I coach and has been a steadfast advocate ever since. He co-founded the Equality Coaching Alliance, the LGBTQ plus Sports Coalition, and the Sports Equality Foundation. This summer, Kirk is being inducted into the LGBTQ plus Sports Hall of Fame, an honor that builds on his recent recognition in Oregon State's Athletic Hall of Fame. Welcome, Kirk.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
Thank you. Next, Coach Lindsay Kaufman is a builder of opportunities and a champion for girls and women in soccer. She founded Girls Unite in the Bay Area with a mission to center equity and leadership in the game. Over 2 decades of coaching, Lindsay has led gold medal winning Maccabi teams, earned accolades like SFUSD's Soccer Coach of the Year and PCA's Double Gold Coach Award, and continues to develop as a coach and referee. She brings both deep skill and deep heart to this work, on and off the pitch. Welcome, Lindsay.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Now let's welcome Cage Leitner, a trans educator, social worker, and founder of Portland Community Football Club, a nonprofit competitive soccer club specifically targeting and supporting low-income, immigrant, and refugee youth. Cage brings nearly 20 years of experience at the intersection of youth development, gender inclusion, and systems change. As the CEO of Quantum Gender, he uses his personal and professional story to help people understand the impact of gender norms and what liberation can truly look like in youth sports. Welcome to our discussion, Cage.
Thanks so much. Great to be here.
And finally, we have Maya Reddy, JD. She joins us with a powerful perspective as a queer South Asian former professional golfer and LGBTQ plus policy advocate. A 3-time NCAA All-American, Maya left the professional tour due to the sport's exclusionary culture and channeled that experience into systems change. She earned her law degree from Penn and founded the Sports Project at the Harvard Law LGBTQ plus Advocacy Clinic. Now, through the Queer Asian Social Club and her consulting work, she advances inclusive sports policies rooted in intersectionality and belonging. Welcome to our conversation, Maya.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. To kick us off, I think it'd be best to just open up the conversation and ask each of you just to share a moment, either early or recently, when your identity helped you see your role in sports differently. Maybe it kind of shifted how you showed up or how you led or how you resisted in this space. We can start with Kirk and work our way through.
Wow. Well, I think for me, I've been out publicly for quite a while, so it's always interesting because just because you're publicly out doesn't mean that everyone that meets you has heard your story or knows your story. So for me, I think anytime we are recruiting is a great opportunity. So when I'm meeting parents, and just last night was talking to a recruit and talking with her parents, and so it's always an opportunity to kind of be able to kind of navigate diversity, right, and inclusion, and how we as a team create our culture. And yeah, so I think it's always on the forefront of my mind of bringing that conversation up about, you know, my identity or me coming out publicly. Now it's a nice opportunity to be able to share that I'm going into the LGBT Sports Hall of Fame. So for me, it centers around recruiting a lot.
I love that, Kirk. Thank you. And I love the duality of like really there's stages. It isn't just a automatic. Lindsay, what has been your experience? And is there a pivotal moment that you can think of?
Um, so I'm very active in my job as a coach and as a director of a club, and then I also am very active in volunteerism, and then I have my like secular life. So I really try to bring the three together and not have them totally separate. So I think I don't have like one pivotal moment, but um, I think there's a few cool moments where like a few years ago, our kids were chosen to carry the this pink torch Pride weekend to sort of ignite Pride weekend. And so I was there dressed as a sister of perpetual indulgence, which is a large part of my volunteerism. I was there as their coach, as their ally, as their safe support system. And then my wife is there and my dog is there. So it's like, I really want kids to understand that like soccer is a part of their identity, right? And that all of these things can come together to make you the person that you are. So I try as, often as possible to just bring all of that together when I'm with my kids so that they can see that you don't have to only be one or the other at any given moment.
I think that effort is really important, and I'm sure it resonates with many of the youth that you work with. Bringing your whole self is, I think, oftentimes the struggle and the job of us as the providers to try and create a space where people feel safe. So, like modeling that authenticity of your entire life showing up in sports, I think really is going to move the needle. Cage, can you think of some specific moments that really shifted how you showed up or how you led the work that you were doing? I can't wait to hear more about what has happened in Portland. I know it's amazing.
Yeah, I think it's a nice dovetail of what you were just saying of showing up as your whole self. There was a really pivotal moment for me, which was in 2017. I decided to publicly come out to the club that I was leading at the time, Portland Community Football Club, which I founded in 2013. And when I founded the club in 2013, I wasn't out as a trans person. I wasn't talking about being a trans person with the kids I was coaching. I was just coach. I literally was just coach. That's what they called me. That's who they knew me as. They knew me as somebody that was really dedicated to making sure they had access to play. And then in early 2017, I went to a conference and met up with some other queer coaches that I knew, and they just sort of assumed I was out and said, "What do you mean you're not out? You haven't been talking about being a trans coach?" And I was like, "No, I'm afraid to. I'm afraid people are going to leave the club. I'm afraid of what's going to happen to me." The rhetoric has always been terrible against trans people, particularly working with kids and in sports and things. So it didn't feel like a safe thing for me to do. But then talking to these other coaches, none of whom were trans, just queer identified coaches, they said, "Cage, you have to be out to these kids. You have to be an example of somebody who's happy and successful and show that side of the story of what it means to be a trans person." I was like, okay. So I left that conference on a Sunday. The next day we had training and I decided I'm gonna do it. And I handed my cell phone to a coach and said, "Can you just record this? I'm gonna come out to all the players." And I truly thought this was gonna be just for my own historical knowledge. And we were gonna put it on our Facebook page and a few people would notice. And it ended up being a viral video that went all around the world and all this attention happened, which was not what I was going for. That was not my intention. But it ended up being a really pivotal moment for me because I realized, A, the feedback and the experience I was having from within the club was so positive. Everybody was so supportive. And then I was seeing all this positive response from all over the country and all over the world. People were messaging me and saying, "Thank you for being there. Thank you for being out. Thank you for helping me to see that my child is going to be okay as a trans identified child." And it was in those moments that I realized, okay, I have to be more out. I have to be more of a forefront speaker, leader. And that was the year that I started Quantum Gender. So I was running Portland Community Football Club and Quantum Gender simultaneously as a way to show that we can intersect around gender and gender inclusion and gender diversity in sport. And I haven't looked back. I've just been going forward from there.
Thank you so much for being a torchbearer, for like really leading that charge and moving forward and not letting the gravity of what you were doing become a deterrent, but really pushing through. I appreciate your courage. Thank you so much. Maya, with a very unique experience, as I've learned more about you as we prepared for today's discussion, where you clearly said there's something wrong, I'm going to step out and I'm going to come back and change. Are there specific moments that shifted and that really fueled the resistance that you've built over these years?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are many folks here who know me, who know how competitive I am and how angry I get with, I mean, injustice everywhere, but especially in sports. But I think what has really informed me and kind of being so much more aware of my intersectional identities was growing up in Redding, California, known for Megan Rapinoe and a cult, which I always love to throw out there. But it's a very white town. It's very Republican leaning, very few families of color. My family was like one of three, I think, at the time, South Asian families. And playing golf, playing sports, my parents threw me into every sport, which I loved. I'm going to be doing that with my toddler now. But I got to play everything, and then I ended up choosing, God knows why, I said, let's choose golf, the easiest sport out there, so inclusive. But that's the sport that I fell in love with. And it was incredibly powerful because I became known as a golfer and I wasn't being kind of singled out by being a brown girl, by, you know, like being queer. I wasn't out at the time, but it was like really obvious I was queer. And that's something that has been so empowering. It's like it worked kind of as a shield for me to be known as an athlete. And so ever since then, I was like, okay, this is super empowering. Why is it the older I get, the more I'm being excluded and the more that's like not being recognized? Like, listen, I played professionally. I won no tournaments. Obviously, I'm not on the tour anymore. Not only because golf is very, very exclusionary, um, but yeah, and kind of from that, kind of noticing that golf has such a long way to go, obviously, when it comes to inclusion, even when we're just talking about gender inclusion, even when we're just talking about racial inclusion. At this moment, golf really likes to be like, you know, just very virtue signaling. We're going to post something in the wake of the murder of George Floyd, but not do anything past that, not kind of recognize how racial justice, gender justice, and queer justice are all intertwined. So for me, not seeing anybody talk about this, knowing that I had the educational privilege to be able to interact with these conversations, I was like, okay, nobody else is doing it. I don't really have a platform, but I still have a voice. So why not just keep talking and keep using what little visibility I have in my various communities to kind of push this forward and, you know, be that like needle, that thorn inside of the golf institution, which, you know, like led me to law school and led me to now. But it really was growing up in that very white space, very like exclusionary space, knowing the power that being an athlete and kind of community building that sports has, that made me be like, you know what? Sorry for me cursing, but I was like, fuck everybody. I belong here. Like, we can't just only talk about women in isolation. We can't just only talk about race in isolation. We can't only talk about queer and trans people in isolation. I'm going to use the fact that I hold multiple identities to be like, hello, like, what are we doing here? We have to talk about everything at the same time. So yeah, I'm here to be a thorn in the side of golf and all, you know, exclusionary sports kind of mechanisms, for lack of a better word.
I love that. And I don't know about the rest of the audience, but I am excited to be like joined by all of these good trouble folks. So I can't wait for this conversation to continue. This just got me really excited. To double back to you, Cage, I know you've worked with teams, with schools, with sports orgs from all the way across the country. What's one aha moment that you've witnessed with either a specific team or just a great coach that truly show that they're beginning to understand what inclusion looks like for all athletes, not based off of a specific identity, but across all their identities, and not just in theory and practice? Apologies, that was a pretty loaded question.
It's a big question, and I think it's a little bit two-part. There's a little bit more of an abstract response, and then I've got a really specific response that's more specific to kind of some of my learnings, actually, if you can believe it. So the more abstract response is that the biggest aha moments that I've seen from folks that I've worked with when I'm under my quantum gender hat as a consultant, is honestly some of the most basic things of, oh, I also have a gender. That is one of the most, the first step that I see so many adults have to come to terms with and have to recognize is, oh, this isn't just about somebody else. This isn't about some other population of people that I don't have any connection with. This is actually about all of us recognizing that we all have a gender, that we all have an identity around our gender. We all express it in certain and different ways, and recognizing that there's actually a connection and there's a greater closure of that gap between a perceived gap between transgender and cisgender people. That's been some of the biggest aha moments of any of the work that I've done on the consulting side. And so I think that's a little bit more abstract, but what's more specific to this question that's not in theory and really happened was actually something that I experienced while running Portland Community Football Club as an out trans person, as a person who's looking at inclusion across all these intersections like Maya was talking about. And when we had our first out trans athlete come to the club, it started out with, it was great. A parent reached out to me and said, hey, my trans male son is really looking for a great place to play, and started asking me all these questions about, do you have gendered teams? No, we don't have any gendered teams. That means your child can play wherever they feel comfortable, wherever their skill is matched. So we had this great environment for the kid to come in, but what I had failed to do as a leader and as a person running the club and thinking about gender inclusion is having a standard way of everybody introducing themselves using their pronouns if they'd like to. We had not established that culture. And I'm telling this story because I think there's often an assumption that people are like, I have to have it perfectly right. I have to have everything in line. I can't make any mistakes. And I'm telling you this story because I made the mistake of not having all that structure in place first. And so what happened was that kid got misgendered. And that kid got a pronoun that was used incorrectly. And it came to my attention from the mom. And the result was we worked on it together. We solved it together. I, was upfront with, I'm sorry that we didn't do more. I talked with the kid. I talked with the parent. There was apologies between kids, and we sorted it out, and we got to a place where the kid basically came and said, it's not a big deal. I just want to go play soccer, right? This just bothered me for a second. And I think that's a really important lesson of like, this doesn't have to be an earth-shattering moment for the kid or for anybody else. It might not be, but it has to be taken as serious of, okay, this is something we need to look at. Let's make sure we do have some different structures and procedures in place. And so then we implemented the introductions, when new kids come into a team or a new season starts. If you want to use your pronouns, you're welcome to say your pronouns. That was it. That was the only change we made. And we also continued to have gender mixed teams. We don't have any gender segregated teams except for one. We have one girls team now. So I think that's in theory what it looks like to have an aha moment. And the aha moment was for me as the trans leader. So I say that as it's okay. Just try things that are new, and you're going to be okay trying new things, and be prepared to make mistakes and handle those mistakes.
I think you also glossed over how well you handled it, of understanding that there is a mistake. You owned the harm.
Yeah.
You expressed accountability, and then you identified what you're going to do actively to make sure that we don't cause this harm again, because we never want that to happen. And I think that the whole thing of mistakes are real, they happen, no one gets it perfect. But owning the impact of our actions, no matter what the intent was, our intents are oftentimes, I don't think I don't think anyone on this call, and no coach I know, wakes up and says, I want to ruin a kid's life today. Like, we come in wanting to do great things and
Yeah.
people make mistakes, but like the way that you handle, I wanted to take a moment to pause and say, like, those steps that you took, although they seem simple, they were important to like maintaining and building trust for that to continue to be a safe space for that youth. So
Yeah.
thank you for walking through that aha moment.
Thanks, Tasha. I appreciate it.
And I want to double back with specifically talking about working with youth athletes. Cage and Lindsay, you guys have worked for some years closely with young athletes. In your work, what are LGBTQ plus youth teaching us about the future of sports? Like, I know this is an interesting generation. I have a couple teenagers. How are they challenging us differently as adults, as coaches, or as systems?
One is that I'm old and my language is not cool anymore. Low key, not cool. So I am ever trying to pick up the vocabulary that is evolving so fast. So they're constantly teaching me new ways to understand how kids are expressing themselves. So I think that's a constant. And then I think just a constant reminder to listen and to better understand what they're saying about who they are, so that I, as an adult in their life, can continue to see them as a whole person, and to help create an environment that feels good for them. So there's a lot of listening that happens with care. And so I think that's the biggest daily lesson is to listen and then to adjust.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all of those things that Lindsay said, particularly the catching up with lingo. I feel like I'm constantly not understanding, which is great. I love it. I'm like, please explain to me these words. I love it. I've been thinking a lot about this question actually, since, I've had a little bit of time to think about it. And while I agree that there's so much that's changed and what Lindsay was just saying is so true, there's also this other part of me that feels like, has there really been that much that's changed with young people versus when we were all young people? Or is it just that there's so much more connectivity between how kids can find each other all around? Because when I think about myself as a 12, 13-year-old kid who was in a body that didn't fit right for me. I was playing with other girls that I wasn't fitting with. I was being told all these things about how you're too aggressive, you're too cocky, you play like a boy. And I thought I was completely alone. I thought I was absolutely completely alone. No one else on the planet understood how I felt because I couldn't find those people. And so now I think about how quickly kids can find each other through the internet and through all this connectivity, which has its downsides. But I think the good upside of it is that you know that there's other people out there like you. And so I think that can give you a confidence to say, this is who I am. And I can tell you that this is who I am. And I want you to respect me because I know there's other people like me. And I've got that sort of confidence behind me. I think sometimes that can influence how kids these days can be demanding of catch up. Come on. We're using all different kinds of pronouns. We're using different language. Just catch up, will you already? Whereas before, I think us kids were like, I don't know, I guess we can't say anything. That's the difference that I see. I don't know, Lindsay, if that makes sense in what you're seeing too, but it's like a shift of mind that I'm having.
Absolutely. There's a built-in community that exists as a result of the connectivity, which, as you mentioned, has its pros and cons, but
Sure.
the connectivity of Discord and TikTok and Instagram and Facebook, and I'm probably going to miss one because there's a new one like every year. But as a result, there's a lot less of the wondering, am I weird? Is there no one like me? There's an understanding that no, this is something, and the adults need to get on board. So
Yeah.
I think there's that pressure, I think, is what I'm hearing from you, for adults to catch up, both in lingo as well as in culture, and understanding.
And one last thing to add to that, I think, is also the flip side of it. Of course, there's all the kids who don't feel like they're being seen and heard and confident and having all sort and like all the mental health injury that's happening. So I'm not trying to paint a broad brush of saying like, it's all great, but I think it's just a little bit of an interesting flex to think about it in the way that I was just describing. Sorry, go ahead, Kirk.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And you said a point that, as much as some things feel like they've changed, really they haven't. There's just how it's being packaged is kind of changing. And certainly the perspective of where these athletes are coming from. I know we went through a period of time where there was generations that didn't want a label. They didn't, I don't want to fit in a box. Like, I don't want to be taglined. And then that's kind of evolved again a little bit. I think it's kind of ebbed and flowed. And I do think it has to do with an individual's personal journey on finding their connectivity. And the fact that you can now find your connectivity, and yet at the same time, I may not want to be fully pigeonholed into a label, is really an interesting journey that I can say everyone on this call, our journey was very different without the social media. I mean, it really is different. But I think at the core, one of the great things about sport is that the sports don't care. They don't care what you look like. They don't care what gender you are. They don't care. Sports is something that really does kind of translate over all of those individual issues, because all that sports wants to know is, do you want to be on the field and do you want to be competing? And I think that's one of the great values of our communities and our identities having a place in sports, because sports is really powerful to just be focused on competing as a team, or competing against a clock or whatever it might be. And I'm not going to be labeled by my identity or my gender. I can be focused on just being an athlete. And I think this is one of the things that's most powerful in this whole movement, is that we want to celebrate the diversity and the differences, but at the end of the day, we all want to just be like, let's just get on the field and compete, and let go of those identities at times. So I think it's really, this generation to me is certainly, as Cage said, so much more enlightened and has access to so much more connectivity and information and identities. But what I find they still love about sports is that when they step on the field or step on the court, it doesn't matter. Like, those things, I don't have to bring those things with me. I can just bring myself as an athlete and love to compete. And that's one thing that I say has stayed consistent over time, is that sports has a great way of unifying all of those things.
Can I add a...
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Maya.
No. I just wanted to add, like, we're talking about like the next generation having so much access to different forms of representation and all of this information. It's very funny that we're talking about this now, because I just interviewed this wonderful author, Kyle Casey Chu, also known by their drag name Panda Dolce. She wrote this book called The Queens of Tybee County, which is it's a middle grade book, which is brilliant. And it's all about this young Asian American queer kid who goes through this. It's a coming of age story, kind of Derek going through this journey of understanding his queerness within the structure of sports. Like, he's trying to play basketball with his friends, and that kind of sets the backdrop for the whole story. And I just wanted to mention it because, as we're talking about kids and young people having access to these different stories, this is one that popped to mind because it's unlike a lot of the conversations that I find myself in, or representational media that's out there that's so valuable and so important. It tends to be directed to an audience that is kind of older folks or people who have a certain degree of educational like privilege or experience. And so, yeah, I wanted to mention this because it's for young kids, younger people, and it is talking about, it is the story of inclusion, of finding yourself. And it's a young Asian American boy. So obviously I'm like, hell yeah, more queer Asian people. But yeah, Queen Bees of Tybee County. Panda Dolce is also an amazing queen. She's a co-founder of Drag Queen Story Hour and was actually hosting, she has an op-ed in Vogue about a Drag Queen Story Hour she hosted that was actually stormed by right-wing extremists. But yeah, sorry, I'm now her publicist, apparently, but highly, highly recommend.
I think that just highlights, although the experiences, the experience of like learning yourself and realizing your identity and getting to know who you are may not have shifted over the years. The external experience of how do you step into that space publicly has really shifted between social media and awesome books like Queen Bees of Tybee County. Like, I can't wait to read it. Like, those type of things really, I think we all talk about this, and I won't soapbox it because this is not my time to talk. But like the idea of representation shows up in all those spaces. So like having Hall of Famers and having like great names and all those things really resonates in order to create a sports space, like as we always want to create, where our athletes feel seen, they feel heard, they feel valued, and they feel like this is a space where I belong, where I don't have to resist, because this space was created for me and I can just like thrive and compete. Like that's the ultimate goal. And I know, Lindsay, you've worked really hard with your organization to reimagine what gender equity looks like and like really rebuild the definition of inclusion from the ground up. I am really interested to learn more about how your own personal queer identity and journey has informed how you built the team culture. And in the midst of that, what are some things that oftentimes orgs or coaches might forget when trying to create an inclusive culture within their sports space?
Yeah, I mean, this has been, I mean, specifically with the club that I started now, so it's a 10-year project. And I'm ever learning. And I also want to acknowledge that I'm white and I live in San Francisco. So I'm afforded a lot of privilege, both as a white person, but as a queer person in California, in San Francisco. So I do very much acknowledge that, like, what I experience and what a lot of my kids experience is probably very, very, very different from what many other people are experiencing around the country and the world. So, what do we do? I mean, one, we're super visible. So, Cage has also been a part of this group, the LGBT plus group, through United Soccer. We started a campaign a few years ago called Play with Pride, where we order shoelaces and give them out to athletes, coaches, referees, supporters. And we give one shoelace. It's rainbow or a trans flag, or any of the flag colors that represent various queer communities. And you just wear one. And so it's a conversation starter, right? Somebody's like, why do you only have one rainbow shoelace? Thank you for asking. It only takes one person, right, as an ally, as a queer person, to make another person feel like they could be safe. So our club proudly gives those to all of our kids and coaches. So when you come out to a soccer field and you see us, you see a whole lot of shoelaces representing various queer communities. We wear DEIB. I know those are bad words now in this country. Proudly on our sleeve of all of our jerseys. And we take our club to all the rallies and protests and the various things that are fighting for, equity and inclusion, not just in sports, but in all of the various intersections of the identities that are all being targeted right now. And and then just collaborating and supporting other amazing people doing a variety of work. We have an organization in San Francisco called Lyric that works with queer youth. And so not sports specific, but some of their kids probably play sports, right? Talking to people like Cage and being on committees with, folks on this call, right? How do we support each other? Because we can't all do everything and can't all know everything. So how can I learn from you? How can you learn from me? How can we support one another in our various, amazing journeys to support one another? And then our coaching staff is very loud and proud, whether they're allies or members of the queer community. And so again, it's just representation. We have a very diverse, racially, socioeconomically, age, abilities on our staff. We have trans, lesbian, queer, coaches, and then we have a lot of queer families. So our families come out loud and proud as well. So just constantly trying to be a presence. We like to go to tournaments in the middle of nowhere. and show up with those shoelaces. We go to Halloween tournaments dressed as RBG, just as often as we can. Like, how do we let folks know that we're safe and that we're also out here banging pots and pans and going to do everything we can to make change and create safe spaces. And then I will also just add, there's someone named Junio Martinez, I believe is his last name, who started a few years ago an adult trans soccer tournament. And amazing. And so we partnered with Unio and did this two years ago, and ran games for youth and for adults. We had no idea if anyone would show up. We had all these kids show up, and it was this aha moment for us and for them. They show up to the field and they're like looking around like, oh my gosh, there's other kids in my city, you know. And that was super impactful. So we're going to do that again this year. And so I'm happy to help anyone wherever you are in the world. If you want to run trans games in your community, let me help you out. How can I show up for you? So I don't know if I answered your question, and I did have coffee today, which doesn't happen every day, so I'm talking a little faster than usual. But it's just how can we be supportive of one another, and I'm here for it. So call me, let me know how I can help you.
No, you answered it wonderfully, and I'll just mention a couple of things that really resonated, at least for me. One, you talked about partnering, which is not always like the first thing. Oftentimes, like C collaboration feels like a dirty word because we don't know if it's going to be competition or collaboration, but you have an open door. So like that idea, and then what we also know, because you mentioned like you're going to different rallies or protests, they may not always be like a specific reason, but we know equity and inequity is never existing in a silo. So like whatever we can bring to our partners, if it's housing injustice, if it's educational injustice, like how can we partner? Because then we're more likely to partner and have a bigger punch for the next one. So like that idea, you're cultivating a generation of disruptors. So like kudos to what you're building there. And then also you ran down a list of representation that was like very, very respectable. Like you said, we have different ages, we have different cultures, we have different abilities, we have different gender identities. Like we're hitting all of those. So we want to make sure anyone who walks on to a pitch that we are connected to sees someone that looks like them, that meets them where they are, and they can come and feel like they're welcome. So there's a number of things to take. It's okay. The coffee did not impede your messaging at all. But those years that you've been working, like they clearly have shown through and given us a lot of things to chew on. I'm really excited on how everyone in our audience will be able to take like very clear strategies home on how they can start implementing a more inclusive environment for their athletes. So thank you so much, Lindsay. That was like great.
You're welcome. And I do sorry, if you are somebody who wants shoelaces for your organization, your college team, your high school team, your soccer club, whatever, please feel free to reach out to me. I think at the end we're putting in our contact information, but I will be very glad to send you as many shoelaces as you need.
And let me just ping off of Lindsay. Portland Community Football Club is almost identical to Girls Unite in everything that Lindsay just described. And so Lindsay and I are both really good people to connect with, depending on where you are in the world and what kind of things you're looking for, because Lindsay can't handle it all and I can't handle it all. And there's more of us out there, but we both have really good ground level founder experiences of what it means to create what Lindsay was just talking about. And it's not easy. And it's also not easy when you're maybe trying to go backwards. Maybe the structure you have currently doesn't look like that, but you want it to. It can be tough to kind of undo, but it's so worth it. So I just wanted to jump in and say, Lindsay and we're on the same team.
I'm so sorry. Can I 2 seconds longer? So 10 years ago, I named our soccer club Girls Unite. It is not the name that I want to stick with because it doesn't feel inclusive for who our community has grown into. So if anyone has any suggestions, feel free to send them to me. I'm kind of thinking about Purple Rain right now because our club colors are purple, REIGN. So anyway, feel free to send something that doesn't, that feels more inclusive, isn't just so super gender specific. So anyway, I'm totally open. Thanks.
As someone who grew up in a house with a mom who absolutely loved Prince, I'm gonna vote for Purple Rain all day.
Hey.
So I'll put my vote in right now. I do want to take a second to talk to Kurt about your experience at the college level. Like, so moving away from youth sports up into collegiate coaching, you've been doing that for over 15 years as a major trailblazer for anyone who isn't sure about being public and being visible. How has your perspective of visibility changed over time, and how do you navigate when sometimes allyship maybe isn't actually transformational, if it's just like a performance that is like checking a box? How do you navigate those moments?
Yeah, I think it's great. And first of all, the work that the Cage and Lindsay are doing, it's like incredible. So thank you for all you're doing. I operate in a different world, but yet I'm so appreciative of what they're doing because it makes such a huge difference. In the space that I'm in, so I'll speak to the coaches out there that are, maybe working at a high school level, a collegiate level, or a different level that maybe isn't targeted towards trans or LGBT youth, but just specifically, but those trans and gender youth and LGBT youth are in sports and they may end up on your teams. And that's why visibility is really important. So we talk about people say, why do we ever have to pride game? Why do we have to have a pride game? Why does this have to be in sports at our level? And when that comes up, I'm like, oh, it's very easy because people matter. I'm like, as long as there's somebody out there that believes it's better off to be dead than to be gay in sports, that's why we have to have visibility. That's why pride matters, because there are kids out there that still do feel like they're alone. They probably haven't had the opportunity to get connected to the amazing organizations that we're just talking about. So they might still think they're alone, and that they're, more importantly, they may know they're not alone, but they may not know whether they're valued or accepted. And so that's why the visibility does matter. The events with shoelaces, the events with a pride event. Even, I will say this, even if it feels like it's just checking a box and somebody's doing a pro team is doing a pride night and like they slap a rainbow on it, I say, so what? Why do we take offense to that? If there is any step, in my opinion, that shows visibility, that is an opportunity for conversation and an opportunity to show value to the people associated with that organization. So to me, I want more than just a rainbow slapped on something, but I'm also not going to shy away if that's an easy answer for somebody because they're not prepped or prepared for a deeper conversation. So I do think that's the value of the organization that we founded with Sports Equality Foundation, is for organizations and people that want to go farther than just a performative pride night. Let's get connected. Let's get you access to information. Let's get you educational things that can help to do more than just be performative. But I don't think performative in this space is a horrible thing, in my opinion, because it does create opportunity. And the visibility is so important. When I came out publicly in 2005, I was the only publicly out coach. And the media asked me this question and I laughed and I said, I've been coaching women's sports for years. I'm like, I'm not the only gay coach. But what I realized was there was a kickback from those coaches that were personally out, but wouldn't be comfortable being professionally out. And so one of the most powerful things that I see today when I go to the coaches associations, and there are hundreds and hundreds of collegiate coaches who are there with their partners, there with their kids. Their families are acknowledged in their media guides, and that never existed. It never existed, and that was just 2005 when that first happened. So to see that transformative change has come way more powerfully than I ever realized. And it wasn't because somebody gave them an instruction manual on how to do it. They just saw someone else do it and said, I'm feeling confident enough in my partner and my relationship that I want to do that as well. And so I just think the visibility is at our level is so incredibly important.
I love that. And I also appreciate you pointing out that even if it's performative, it maybe it's just the one shoelace effect. Maybe it's like the way to get the conversation started by let's at least we're not happy with it. That's not it. But like let's start this process and get some conversations flowing with that first checkbox, and then let's figure out how we can be transformative coming off of that. So let's get the one shoelace in our sneaker, and then we'll figure out how we can start stepping forward together. I really appreciate that very inclusive way of approaching transformation in cultures. And it's really clear that you're very well versed in how to operate in systems from throughout college athletics. So I want to open this up to both Kirk and Maya. In operating in these systems that typically have very high stakes scenarios, where do you see the biggest opportunities for structural change? So like we started with the shoelace, but how do we now create some transformation in LGBTQ plus inclusion in sports right now? Whether it's like leadership, policy, education, or if there's something I'm not even thinking of, where are you excited about some transformation happening?
So I actually was just talking about this with a friend in relation to kind of the LGBTQ movement as a whole and how we can be more effective and kind of where all of the different pieces of the puzzle fit. Like folks were talking about just now, it's like sometimes one shoelace is going to make a difference, right? And there may be people that are like, no, that's not enough. But what we have to realize is that there are all of these pieces that fit into the puzzle of resistance, and they're all valid, right? Like we all have to work together. I think for me, what I want to see more and what I think is a really, really important and also simple challenge to systems and kind of their kind of state where they are right now is having more cis female athletes speak in support of trans athletes. I think that when we're talking about trans inclusion in sport, it is such an important space to start because it is part of trying to exclude a group of people from public spaces. Like, let's just name it what it is. And that's an experience that cis women have had, right? Like, that only started to change, 53 years ago with the passing of Title IX. It happened with Black folks, especially within sports. That has not changed, right? Like it has changed in various ways. And also, there's still a great deal of racism that we see constant. I see that with the LPGA trying to model the W, and yet at the same time, very much avoiding conversations about race. So for me, when I think about trans inclusion in sports and the importance of cis female athletes speaking out, the reason why I think that has a huge effect on systems is that it shows that this is not like some isolationist issue. Like it's not impacting just the small group of people, it has these wider ranging effects. And speaking as a queer woman of color, it's like this has this, I know I'm speaking like more at a high level space right now, but it's something that I really want to see spoken about more, even if it's just kind of a coach or an individual recognizing a person's different identities and kind of moving past this, I mean, let's just say a bullshit idea of colorblindness, right? Like that doesn't really help anybody. And so when we're talking about trans inclusion in sports, right, like it really means policing people's gender and what it means to be in a sport and to be an athlete that succeeds in sport. And so that necessarily is going to impact how all women are looked at, scrutinized, especially women of color. And you see that historically with the Williams sisters, who were, like very often referred to as the Williams brothers. You see that most recently with Iman Khalif, the Algerian boxer, who just simply because she looks like an athlete, everybody, J.K. Rowling had a fit. And you see that with very, very young athletes who, like a 9-year-old in Canada who had a bowl cut and parents, threw a fit and tried to get her gender, verified. And so I keep focusing on this because I think trans inclusion in sports is an intersectional conversation. And if we're able to engage in that and recognize how these things affect all of us, especially as leaders within sport, coaches, administrators, people who hold a certain amount of power, I think that does go a long way to challenging different kind of old guard thinking of sports. And I know for me, like when I've had these conversations with my old white guy friends in golf who like don't really understand what trans inclusion means, or even my lifting coach right now who like wants to know, when we're able to have a conversation of like, look at how it impacts all of us, right? And that's why we need to be even fiercer allies and fiercer supporters. It has changed the way that they look at things, and it has changed the way that they think more expansively about sports. And I know I spoke at kind of like a more high level. Obviously, this is something that I'm very, very interested in interrogating and challenging all the time. And I think especially when leaders and coaches are white people, I think that there's even more responsibility in using that privilege for good. And all of us hold different forms of privilege. Like me, I have a law degree, canceled. So I should use that, like I'm very aware of using that privilege and that access to education and knowledge, and knowing that that puts me in a different position than, kind of other folks and young people who are playing sports.
I appreciate everything you're saying, Maya. I like to say allyship is yesterday stuff. I need co-conspirators. I need people who are going to get like in the ground with me thinking, and this is a joke, but I'm absolutely serious. The great philosopher Ted Lasso said, stay curious. So thinking of that, Maya, when we're looking at this intersectionality in the advocacy of equity for LGBTQ plus inclusion, what are some questions, some curious questions that folks can ask themselves or ask others in order to generate the appropriate conversations, like to unpack some of the intersectionality?
I mean, I think the first question that I still ask myself is like, why the hell do I play sports anyway? It's like, why do I want to play sports? When I look at my 2-year-old, I'm constantly trying to be like, Maya, do not force your competitive nature on him. Let him figure it out. And so always trying to be like, okay, why did I want to play sports? Why do I want my son to try playing sports? Why do any of us, gravitate to sports? For me, it's like, I mean, we just want to go out and play with our friends at the end of the day. Um, and so I think that's like a really, really big question to ask. Oftentimes, especially now, the conversation gets so wrapped up in competition and winning and framed around Olympic level or elite athlete level sports. And that's important, obviously important. And it's not applicable to every person who's going to play sports, right? Like my son, it would be cool if he goes to the Olympics, but it's like most kids aren't necessarily going to play professional, like, sports or go to the Olympics. And so that's not the end goal. And I think I would challenge people to continually rethink what the point of sports is, right? Like we're going out there to play. And if we can start from that baseline, then this idea of advantage, of unfairness, of fairness, like I think that goes away or is at least diminished enough to have a larger conversation. Um, yeah, I mean, like sports inherently are pretty stupid. Like, I mean, golf, like take golf for an example. Like I'm trying to hit a tiny white ball into a hole and I'm like so frustrated. It's like deeply toxic relationship. So it's like, why do I want to go play, do that? Oh, it's because there's a sense of accomplishment. Like I get to hang out with some friends for 4 hours. And so why is it that we are there's a group of people that are saying only some folks are allowed to have that and others are not, just by virtue of who they are. Um, So for me, that's what it always boils down to. I think like a really great example of that at play in a social justice way is this incredible group called Skate Pal. It's a group based in the UK that is all about supporting Palestinian youth through skateboarding. So it's using sport as a way to um, not bolster, but empower young people in Palestine, right? Provide a space of play and community and gathering. And I think that's like so important, right? Like, even in the face of an ongoing genocide, there are kids that are being given the opportunity to play, right? Like, they're out there playing, they have these incredible leaders around them that are like, we just want to have you go play. So, like, again, it's for me always coming back to that feels really important when we're talking about inclusion and exclusion, because at the end of the day, it's all about play. And if we can come together at that baseline, then we can only build from there.
I love that. And this has been an hour filled with joy for me. Tons of laughs and smiles. So I appreciate all of your time. I do want to take a moment and recognize that when this call ends, we're going to step right back into America 2025. So despite everything, despite the resistance we're feeling, the headlines that we see, the hate that may be experienced in many spaces, what is giving you hope right now? And this is for everyone. What keeps you fighting for inclusion in sport? I'd be happy we can start with Kirk and then work our way through. But I just want to hear lasting moments of hope as we close out our hour together.
Yeah, I mean, I think to feed right off of what Maya said, I mean, sports, why sports? Why do they exist? They exist for human nature to be able to achieve and to fail and to achieve and to fail and achieve in a way that doesn't matter at the end of the world, right? If I fail at sports, who cares? It doesn't matter. But it does create an empowerment that is really important. And that's a human instinct. That's why we're all drawn to sports. Why fans are there for sports is different than why we as individuals step into the arena. You know, and the Teddy Roosevelt quote about, you know, the power of the man that steps in the arena is really an important quote, because that's about why we exist in sports. The coolest thing for me about sports, and some of the positive things are within sports, I believe, and I've experienced this, that there's more acceptance and more value and more appreciation of our diversity within sports when you are connected and know somebody. Where we run into problems is when people want to judge about other people's involvement in sports, not my own teammate, not my own people that I play with. And that's where we have to continue to educate. But to me, sports is a very welcoming space that has great exclusionary talons that keeps getting thrown out there. But to me, I think associations, any level that moderates sport, their goal, as Maya said, should be about how can we be inclusive of our transgender athletes, of our different space athletes. How can we be inclusive of those spaces? Anybody that's out there legislating exclusion in sports, let's start right there. Why is anybody legislating exclusion into sports? Sports is for all. So any association that is focused on the exclusion and not the inclusion, they have it backwards. And I think we have to keep shouting that from the rooftops, because I too believe within sports, that's what people believe.
And Kirk, where can we, if we wanted to connect with you, are you on any of socials? We can hear more.
Yeah, I mean, you can connect me on socials easily. And at UCLA, obviously, I'm still there, chief of staff role for probably a few more years. But sportsequalityfoundation.org is a great organization. We actually are relaunching a forum this summer. We're doing the Hall of Fame in August, but then we're also relaunching the forum, which Cage, I think you were part of when we were at the Be True with Nike. We're bringing that back because we need all of the people like on this call and from across the different aspects of sports to get into a room to figure out how we can keep navigating and amplifying all the work that we're doing. So that's going to be happening. And there's information about that at sportsequalityfoundation.org. And would love to have all of these individuals there because they're brilliant. And I appreciate all of you for your input and I look forward to learning more.
Thank you. Lindsay, can you share with us what's giving you hope right now and what's keeping you fighting, and then also where we can hear more from you?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things that give me hope every day. I mean, really seeing the number of people out in the streets that are fighting for one another, that gives me hope. The relationships that I see that are built through our organization gives me hope. The several queer and trans kids that want to march with me this weekend for Pride weekend, that the trans march tomorrow night and come and join me at the Dyke March on Saturday. Like that just brings tears to my eyes and gets me up in the morning. There's a lot of things that keep me from getting out of bed in the morning, and those are the things that I'm like, all right, the sun's up, let's go. um and I am my wife's co-conspirator, and so that gets me out of bed in the morning. And so there's just so many things that give me hope. And yeah, everyone on this call gives me hope, and the communities that you work with give me hope. So everyone keep fighting hard. And I just want to throw out a couple things. I think you were about to ask me, but I will throw it out there anyway. Ways to get involved. I mean, feel free to contact me. I'm happy to connect you to anyone and anything that I can. Bay Area Women's Sports Initiative, Bossy, they're a great organization. Lyric, LYRIC in San Francisco, great organization. All your LGBT centers, contact them. You know, if you're an elder in our community, contact Open House. Like, there's so many ways to help queer communities, and everyone needs support right now. So, yeah.
Thank you so much. Cage, can you share with us just a little bit of what keeps you fighting and pushing forward, and also where we can hear more from you?
Yeah, and before I say that, I just have to tag on one thing to what Maya was saying. And Maya, you and I, we need to chat because I'm in this fight of let's make trans inclusion a thing in sport. The thing that I wanted to tag on to what Maya was saying was that one of the things that's happening right now in the rhetoric around trans people in general, and all the exclusionary, is that we are being reduced down to a percentage of the population of the United States, and the percentage that is being touted out there is, oh, it's only 1% of the population of the United States. That is bullshit. There is no way that the United States government has ever been able to track how many trans people are in the United States because we are not counted on the census. I have no opportunity to mark my appropriate sex at birth and gender on the census. They don't know that I exist. So that 1% that seems like it can just be erased, like, it's just 1%, who's going to care? That's not true. So that's one thing. Now, why am I hopeful in the face of all that? Because sports saved my life. I would not be on this planet if I didn't have sports. And if I was on this planet, I would be one of those terrible statistics, most likely, of somebody who was trying to heal myself through addiction. That is where I saw my future going if I didn't have sport. And so the fact that sports is something that is ingrained in every part of the fiber of my being means that gives me hope that it should be for everybody else, and there should be no barriers put in place. And I will spend the rest of my life working to eliminate those barriers of all kinds of intersections of identities, but particularly for trans people and gender non-binary people. So it's the stories, it's the kids that I know, it's the families that I know, it's the people that I read about across the country. It's about AB Hernandez running a race in California, and the state of California saying, we're going to change our rules and you're going to get to share the podium. Perfect answer? No. Perfect solution? No. A solution? Yes. Something that people are trying to say, let's not exclude, like Kirk said. Let's find a way to include. Let's try something. Maybe it's not perfect, but let's try something instead of just, nope, we can't say yes at all to any trans people being included in sport. That's the kind of stuff that gives me hope that there are people out there that do want to try to push this envelope and think about gender in a different way. Gender is for all of us to imagine. It is a made up, false structure of the gender binary that is made up. Don't believe it. It's all false. We can make our gender however we want to. It's a beautiful, amazing thing once you realize that. And once we can get everybody to agree to that, everybody gets to play. Amazing. So that's where I'm hanging on to, and that's what I focus my work on with quantum gender, pretty specifically. The question of how can you get in touch with me? I was paying attention. Quantumgender.com is the website for where you can find me for consulting work. I'm only on LinkedIn. I have given up on all other social media for a various amount of reasons, but I'm active on LinkedIn. Please look me up. Love to connect with people. And this is the work that I love to do and what I was made to do. So happy to talk to folks.
Thank you. And Maya, I feel like in the finite time we've talked, you are actually fueled by the resistance of others. But can you tell me a little bit more of what keeps you fighting, and also where we can hear more from you?
Yeah, no, I mean, I just want to punch Nazis, honestly. And most of my work, especially in therapy, is finding ways to do that, perhaps not in a literal way, and in a much more effective way for our collective movement. Um, but I think what keeps it so like cliche to be like my son, but my toddler keeps me going, being like, okay, now I get to see the world through his eyes and not through my, kind of what I know of the world being on fire. But also, like, again, everybody on this panel having friends who are so eager, who may not be in like quote unquote leadership positions, but are so eager to learn, so eager to speak out. I'm so excited by other organizations, like larger governing bodies of sports, who are very explicit in their support of trans athletes, of queer athletes, of athletes of color. I'm thinking specifically of the NWSL and Angel City, who had a really like immediate statement about the ICE raids in Los Angeles, who have consistently been explicit in their support of trans athletes, and who are always so stoked to celebrate Pride, celebrate Asian American History Month, Indigenous History Month, Black History Month, but doing so in a way that is actually lived in and not kind of, slap it on the side to say that we did it type of thing, like actually walking the walk. So that makes me really excited. I love to just try and remember the play of it all. Like I've kind of pounded to death in this panel. But I really like remembering that what we're trying to protect and what we're fighting for is just all of our ability to play in, different contexts. Of the 500 things that I do, because I love to find new ways to punch Nazis, I founded this community organization. It's a golf organization, an LGBTQ initiative called Open Fairways, that's all about celebrating queer and trans joy in golf. It's a deeply unserious thing. Our vibe is very John Waters-esque, so we're here to really have fun and really embrace our queerness. And right now, we've been doing a series on LPGA athletes, queer LPGA athletes from like the past. And that's been really fun to do. It's lightly disheartening because you do see how few queer athletes of color there are. And I think that's also been a really big driving force for me to continue to try and make spaces where more queer and trans athletes of color can feel comfortable or safe enough to come out. Um, yeah, it's super fun. We have like our events. Sorry to plug, we just made a flyer for this, but we have an event coming up in September. That's our Miss Baltimore Crabs Professional Golf Series. So it's a drag golf brunch where it's hosted by two local drag queens. We have a drive, chip, and putt tournament culminating in a lip sync for your drive, where you have to lip sync and then try and hit a very long drive. A good lip sync can override a bad drive. So that's been kind of like the secondary piece to fighting for legislative and policy change. And if you're into queer Asian stuff, follow Queer Asian Social Club. it's queer Asian stuff. I love to do gay Asian things and gay sports things if I were to boil down my life. But I'm so excited to like I'm always thrilled to work together with people like Lindsay, Cage, what you guys were talking about. Like it's not just collaborating, it's partnering and not reinventing the wheel and everybody kind of taking ownership of our pieces in the puzzle and then fitting it all together. That's what I'm most excited to do with people. And I'm always happy to talk anybody's ear off about the law and all of the policy stuff and how it's failing in the intersectional way. But yeah.
Thank you, Maya. Thank you, Kurt. Thank you, Lindsay. Thank you, Cage. Thank you all for your honesty, your clarity, your hope. It's easy to romanticize sports as the universal connector that makes everyone feel like they can be a part, but for LGBTQ plus athletes and leaders, the playing field has never been truly level. Today's conversation reminds us that inclusion isn't a buzzword, it's a practice. One that requires discomfort, that transitions into reflection and ends up being decisive action. True inclusion in sports starts with listening to our athletes, the coaches, the teammates, whoever we know who's had to navigate the barriers that we may or may not see. It means reflecting how we build teams, shape policies, and make people feel like they belong. Today's conversation reminds us that each of us can create a stronger and a more welcoming environment on and off the field. So whether you're a coach, an administrator, a policymaker, or just someone who really cares, you have a role to play. We hope you'll take what you've heard today and turn it into an action, whether it's in your team, it can be in your workplace or in your own community, because inclusion doesn't just happen, we make it happen. Thank you again for joining us, and to grab one of Kirk's earlier statements, why does Pride matter? Because people matter. So have a happy Pride and enjoy your June.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much.